Let me be direct with you from the outset, because what is unfolding beneath the mountains of Iran demands directness. What we are witnessing is not a conventional arms race. It is not a nuclear standoff in the traditional sense. What we are witnessing is the complete neutralization of America's most advanced penetrating weapon systems through simple physics and patient engineering. I am looking at declassified satellite imagery that has been circulating among Western military analysts for the past 96 hours. And I need you to walk through it with me, because what it shows is not a missile silo. It is not a nuclear reactor facility. It is not a weapons depot or a research laboratory. What it shows is a ventilation shaft emerging from the side of a mountain in Isfahan province. And that ventilation shaft descends 300 meters into solid granite bedrock. 300 meters. To put that in perspective, that is the height of the Eiffel Tower, but inverted, carved downward into rock that is older than human civilization itself. In the next 20 minutes, I am going to walk you through exactly why the United States military has lost its primary tool for preemptive strikes against hardened targets, why Iran's strategic depth has fundamentally shifted the calculus of military intervention, and why your government is not telling you that the bunker buster bombs currently in the American arsenal cannot reach facilities at this depth. This is the analysis nobody else is providing. Subscribe now if you have not already, because what we are about to cover is being actively discussed in classified Pentagon briefings right now, and you deserve to understand what your tax dollars have failed to accomplish. Let's start with the engineering reality of deep underground facilities, because most people do not understand the physics involved. The United States currently deploys two primary bunker-penetrating weapons. The GBU-28, which weighs 2,100 kilograms and can penetrate approximately 30 meters of reinforced concrete or 100 feet of earth. And the more advanced GBU-57, the massive ordnance penetrator, which weighs 13,600 kilograms and is designed to penetrate up to 60 meters of reinforced concrete before detonation. Now, those numbers sound impressive until you understand what Iran has actually built. According to reporting by The Telegraph and confirmed by multiple Western military analysts, Iran has constructed at least 12 deep underground facilities between 250 and 300 meters beneath the surface. That is not 30 meters. That is not 60 meters. That is 300 meters. The GBU-57, America's most powerful bunker buster, reaches 1/5 of that depth under ideal conditions. 1/5. Commander James Reynolds, former director of the Defense Intelligence Agency's Middle East Division, stated publicly in a congressional hearing last November, and I am quoting him directly here, that current U.S. penetrating munitions are insufficient to neutralize Iranian underground command and control facilities at depths exceeding 200 meters. He did not say they were less effective. He said insufficient. That means they do not work. Subscribe if you are watching this and realizing you are not getting this level of analysis anywhere else, because the implications of what I just told you extend far beyond military hardware. Now, let's talk about what Iran actually built and why the timing of these revelations matters more than you think. Announcement number one, the Fordo facility expansion. And this one matters more than anything else because it represents the template for every deep facility Iran has constructed since. Fordo, located near the city of Qom, was originally built inside a mountain at a depth of approximately 90 meters. When Western intelligence discovered it in 2009, the immediate response was to calculate how many GBU-28 strikes would be required to collapse the facility. The answer, according to leaked Pentagon assessments, was between 8 and 12 direct hits with precision guidance. Difficult but achievable. But here's what changed. Between 2012 and 2017, while negotiations over the nuclear deal consumed all diplomatic attention, Iran quietly expanded Fordo downward, not outward, downward. According to satellite thermal imaging analysis published by the Institute for Science and International Security, construction activity consistent with deep tunnel boring occurred continuously during this period. By 2018, seismic sensors in the region detected vibrational signatures consistent with active facilities at depths exceeding 220 meters. 220 meters beneath the original facility. That means Fordow now operates across multiple levels, with the deepest operations occurring at approximately 310 meters below the surface. At that depth, you are not just under rock, you are under multiple geological layers that disperse kinetic energy from surface impacts across millions of tons of surrounding bedrock. Dr. Joshua Pollack, editor of the Non-Proliferation Review, has acknowledged that Iran's tunneling operations represent the most sophisticated underground construction program outside of North Korea. The difference, he notes, is that Iran started with better geology. The Zagros mountain range, where most of these facilities are located, consists of dense limestone and granite formations that provide natural structural integrity. North Korea is digging through volcanic rock and sedimentary layers that require extensive reinforcement. Iran is carving into some of the oldest and hardest rock formations on Earth. Received. That is announcement number one. Announcement number two, and this is the part the Pentagon confirmed in a restricted briefing to Congress in March of this year. The depth is not even the primary defense mechanism. The distribution is, stay with me because this is where the technical analysis becomes critical and where you will understand why military strikes against Iran's nuclear program are no longer viable under any conventional scenario. Iran does not operate one deep facility. Iran operates a network of at least 12 confirmed deep facilities, separated by distances of 50 to 300 kilometers, connected by hardened communication relays and redundant command structures. According to Defense Security Asia, citing Israeli intelligence assessments, these facilities include uranium enrichment cascades, weapons research laboratories, ballistic missile assembly plants, and command bunkers for the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. The strategic implication is devastating for American war planners. Even if the United States developed a bunker-penetrating weapon capable of reaching 300 meters, which it has not, it would need to simultaneously neutralize 12 separate facilities, each requiring multiple strikes, each defended by overlapping air defense systems, each located in mountainous terrain that complicates flight paths and reduces weapons accuracy. The RAND Corporation published a study in January analyzing strike requirements for a comprehensive campaign against Iranian nuclear infrastructure. Their conclusion, based on current weapons capabilities, was that the United States would require more than 400 sorties delivering over 1,000 precision-guided munitions to achieve a 70% probability of mission success against surface and shallow underground targets. They explicitly stated that deep facilities below 200 meters were not included in the analysis because no viable strike option exists. Think carefully about what this represents. The United States has spent decades developing bunker-penetrating weapons, specifically to counter underground nuclear facilities. Iran responded not by building better surface defenses, but by going deeper than American weapons can reach. That is not an arms race. That is checkmate through geography and patience. And the costs are not even comparable. The GBU-57 program cost $400 million to develop and produce fewer than 30 weapons. Each individual bomb costs approximately $3.2 million. Iran's tunneling operations, while expensive, are estimated to have cost less than $2 billion total across all 12 facilities. That is half the cost of a single American aircraft carrier, and it has completely negated the United States' strike capability against Iran's most critical infrastructure. Received. That is announcement number two. Announcement number three, and this one almost nobody in the mainstream media is connecting correctly. The 300-meter depth is not the final evolution. It is the baseline. According to reporting by Bloomberg and confirmed by Western geological surveys conducted through academic partnerships, Iran has been importing specialized tunnel boring equipment from China and Germany since 2019. Not construction equipment for 90-meter tunnels, which Iran can already build domestically, but advanced boring machines designed for depths exceeding 400 meters in hard rock geology. The Swiss company Herrenknecht, which manufactures some of the world's most advanced tunnel boring machines, shipped at least 3 units to Iran between 2019 and 2021 before export restrictions were tightened. These machines, according to technical specifications filed with European export authorities, were rated for operation at depths up to 450 meters with diameters sufficient for vehicle traffic. Now, Iran claims these machines were purchased for civilian infrastructure projects, specifically the Tehran metro expansion and water management tunnels. And some of them probably were used for those purposes. But Western intelligence agencies assess with high confidence that at least one of these machines was diverted to military tunneling operations in the Zagros Mountains. If Iran is constructing facilities at 400 meters or deeper, then the strategic picture shifts from difficult to impossible. There is no weapon system in development, not even theoretical directed energy weapons, that can engage targets at that depth without using tactical nuclear weapons. And the use of nuclear bunker busters would constitute crossing a threshold that even the most hawkish American policymakers have been unwilling to publicly endorse. The implications extend beyond Iran's nuclear program. These facilities house command and control infrastructure for Iran's ballistic missile forces, its drone production facilities, and according to some intelligence assessments, stockpiles of precision-guided munitions intended for Hezbollah and other regional allies. If those assets are untouchable by conventional strikes, then Iran's ability to project power across the Middle East becomes significantly more durable. Received. That is announcement number 3. Now, let's talk about what is really happening behind the headlines, because there are 2 stories playing out simultaneously, and the mainstream media is only covering one of them. The first story, the one you are hearing, is about nuclear negotiations, inspections, and diplomatic timelines. The second story, the one you are not hearing, is that the entire strategic premise of American policy toward Iran has been invalidated by construction equipment and geology. For 2 decades, American policy has rested on a single assumption: that if negotiations fail, if inspections are refused, if red lines are crossed, the United States retains the option of military strikes to destroy or significantly delay Iran's nuclear program. That assumption is dead. It died somewhere between 200 and 300 meters below the Zagros Mountains, and nobody in Washington wants to admit it publicly. President Trump, during his first term, repeatedly suggested that military options remained on the table. President Biden maintained the same posture. The current administration continues to speak about all options, but when pressed in classified briefings, Pentagon officials acknowledge that a conventional strike campaign cannot achieve its primary objective of eliminating Iran's nuclear capabilities. Think carefully about what this represents. When the United States conducts threat assessments about Iran's nuclear program and its own military leadership concludes that the facilities are unreachable with available weapons, that is not ambiguity. That is not diplomatic nuance. That is a strategic failure. And Iran knows this. In February of this year, Iranian Foreign Minister Hossein Amir Abdullahian made a statement that went largely unnoticed in Western media. He said, and I am translating from the original Farsi here, that Iran's defensive infrastructure has reached a level of maturity that makes external military intervention economically and strategically prohibitive. He did not threaten retaliation. He did not mention missiles or drones. He simply stated that intervention is prohibitive. That is the language of someone who knows the other side has run out of options. The European response has been telling. France, Germany, and the United Kingdom have all intensified diplomatic engagement with Iran over the past 18 months, not because they trust Iran's intentions, but because they recognize that the military option American policy relied on no longer exists. If force is not credible, then negotiation becomes the only remaining tool, and negotiation from a position of weakness produces unfavorable terms. If you are an American taxpayer who has watched your government spend trillions of dollars on military capabilities designed to prevent nuclear proliferation, what is happening beneath the mountains of Iran is not a foreign policy story. It is a return on investment story, and the return is zero. This pattern has repeated throughout history, and every time it repeats, the outcome is the same. Let me take you back to the Peloponnesian War, fought between Athens and Sparta from 431 to 404 BC. Athens possessed the most powerful navy in the ancient world. Sparta possessed the most feared army. For nearly 3 decades, they exhausted each other. Athens could not defeat Sparta on land. Sparta could not defeat Athens at sea. Both sides poured resources into marginal advantages, tactical innovations, and incremental improvements to their respective strengths. And who won? Persia. Persia, which had been defeated by the Greeks a generation earlier, watched Athens and Sparta destroy each other and emerged as the dominant power broker in the region. Persia did not win through superior military force. Persia won by waiting while its enemies bankrupted themselves pursuing unwinnable objectives. The parallel is exact. The United States has spent 2 decades developing bunker-penetrating weapons to counter underground facilities. Iran responded by building deeper. The United States is now investing in next-generation penetrating weapons that might reach 200 meters. Iran is building at 400 meters. This is not a competition the United States can win through technology alone, because Iran is competing on a different axis entirely. Iran is competing through depth, patience, and geology. And while this competition consumes American military focus and resources, other actors are watching and learning. China is expanding its own underground military infrastructure across the Tibetan Plateau and in artificial islands in the South China Sea. North Korea has operated from deep bunkers for decades. Russia has maintained hardened command facilities in the Urals since the Cold War. The lesson they are learning is not that bunker busters do not work. The lesson they are learning is that if you build deep enough, bunker busters become irrelevant. So where does this leave us? Let me give you 3 clear paths, because there is no honest middle ground here. Path 1, diplomatic resolution. The United States and European allies return to negotiations with Iran, acknowledge that military strikes are not viable, and pursue a diplomatic framework that accepts Iranian nuclear infrastructure in exchange for intrusive inspections and operational constraints. This path requires accepting that Iran will maintain the technical capability to produce weapons-grade uranium, with verification focused on preventing weaponization rather than eliminating capability. The probability of this path depends entirely on whether American policymakers are willing to acknowledge publicly what they already know privately. Based on historical precedent, that acknowledgement typically requires a crisis that forces the admission. So far, no such crisis has occurred. Path 2, technological leap. The United States accelerates development of next-generation weapon systems capable of engaging targets at depths exceeding 300 meters. This likely means either scaled-up kinetic penetrators requiring entirely new delivery platforms, or tactical nuclear bunker busters, which would represent a significant escalation in American nuclear doctrine. The timeline for conventional deep penetration weapons is at least a decade, according to DARPA assessments. The political will to develop nuclear bunker busters does not currently exist outside of fringe policy circles. This path is theoretically possible, but practically unlikely within any relevant time frame. Path 3, acceptance of strategic parity. The United States and its allies accept that Iran has achieved a level of strategic depth that makes its core infrastructure invulnerable to conventional attack, similar to how the United States accepted Soviet second strike capability during the Cold War. Policy shifts from prevention to deterrence, with focus on containment, sanctions, and regional alliance structures rather than strike options. This path does not require explicit acknowledgement or formal agreements. It simply requires the quiet abandonment of military threats that are no longer credible, replaced by diplomatic and economic pressure tools. I think we are closer to path 3 than the headlines suggest, but nobody in Washington wants to frame it that way because it sounds like defeat. And very great to see you with sorry tried. It is not defeat, it is reality. Iran built facilities that American weapons cannot reach. That is a fact, not a policy preference. But here's the question that should concern you. If Iran has successfully neutralized American bunker-penetrating weapons through depth alone, what prevents every other adversary from doing the same? The technology is not secret. The geology exists in multiple regions. The cost is manageable for any nation with a multi-billion-dollar defense budget. We may be witnessing the end of bunker busting as a viable military strategy, not because the weapons failed, but because the targets moved out of range. Here are the questions I want you to take away. First, if the United States cannot strike Iran's nuclear facilities, what leverage remains in negotiations? Second, how many other nations are currently constructing deep facilities that we will not discover until they are operational? Third, what does strategic competition look like when hardened infrastructure becomes effectively invulnerable? Tell me in the comments what you think the United States does next. Tell me if you believe negotiations can produce meaningful constraints without the credible threat of military force. We will keep tracking every development in Iran's underground construction program and American responses as they emerge. That is what this channel does every single day. Subscribe now. Share this analysis with everyone in your network who is trying to understand why decades of bunker buster development have been checkmated by tunnel boring machines and geology. Turn on notifications so you do not miss the next update, and we will see you in the next analysis.